No, I'm busy taking notes. Oh, sorry. Sorry. Yes. Is that it? Where else? Geez, I was in the middle of taking notes, for the episode, and all of a sudden I'm live. Welcome back. It is Tuesday, the 13th of August, and after something of a hiatus, two missed episodes yesterday and last Monday, for which I hope you can forgive me, and I will explain briefly. Welcome to Live Irish Myths. This is episode number 289. This evening we're talking about Fourknocks, that wonderful, extraordinary and exquisite monument of the Neolithic, a passage tomb like Newgrange, but not like it in many respects. Located 9 miles as the crow flies, or 15 kilometres from that great monument. And it's a hugely important part of the story of Stone Age Ireland. And I hope you agree. So last week, the reason I didn't live stream, which I had flagged previously, was the fact that immediately after the launch of the book, which took place on Sunday, the 4th of August, in the Highlands Gallery, I was heading to Sligo the next day on the bank holiday Monday for a 2-day tour with a group of people from the United States and Canada. And we were up at Carrow Keel and Queen Maeve's Cairn. And the next day, we were actually a 3-day tour in a way. The next day we were at the Hill of Tara. And then the next day we were at Fourknocks and Lough Crew. So I had a busy week last week with tours. And then myself and Anne were basically getting all the pre-orders for the Fourknocks book processed and shipped. And you'll be glad to know we're completely up to date. So if you pre-ordered the book, if you haven't already received it, you should have received an email with your tracking number on it. It's on its way. I'm delighted to say thank you to everybody who has pre-ordered the book. Pre-ordering actually began last January. The original intention was to publish the book on the spring equinox, but as I wrote it, the book got bigger in size and scale. And what emerged was actually what I believe to be the perfect book. And please don't think that self-praise. I don't mean it in that respect. I mean the book as it was meant to be published, the complete picture of Fourknocks, which we will get to shortly. Thank you to everybody who turned out to the launch. The Highlands Gallery staff here in Drogheda tell me that it was their best attended launch event ever, which was fabulous. A special mention to Johnny Wilson, who's watching. Johnny, as you may know, joins the live streams regularly from Dallas in Texas. He's been in Ireland for a while. He took part in the joint tour of Ishnock recently with myself and Simon Chute of Monumental Ireland. And then he turned up to the launch. I think, if I'm not mistaken, probably the furthest travelled person who attended the launch. Also, there was Tom King. And you may have seen pictures of this, but Tom made this special bronze pendant for me for the launch, a one-off unique item based on the chevrons of Stone Sea at Fourknocks. We'll be showing you photos of that shortly. A really beautiful item, and thank you, Tom, for making that and indeed for attending the launch. I was saying to Tom, if you could find the time to make more of these will be a big seller on the Mythical Ireland website. So watch this space. Special mention to Mandy McCurl. Mandy was there also. And to everybody who turned up, it was a great event. Lovely. First book launch in person since 2019 when I launched Dronehenge in the same venue. I had also previously launched Mythical Ireland, the book, in 2017 in the same venue. And there were 4 book launches during the pandemic, which were virtual launches when we couldn't have in-person launches. So it's such a joy and a pleasure to be able to meet and greet and sign books for people face to face and shake hands and have conversations. It was brilliant. And then this week I've been busy. Yesterday and today I had a group from the United States. Yesterday we were at Newgrange and Meath in the morning, and Fourknocks in the afternoon. Today we were at Lough Crew in the morning. You may have seen the pictures. There was a shower of rain while we were there. It was great fun. And in the afternoon at the Hill of Tara. Yesterday, after I left that group at Fourknocks, I was giving a talk about the mythology of the Boyne Valley, to an international group at Rossnary House, the site of the Mound of Cletchuk, overlooking Linfake, Fake's Pool, the place where in mythology the great salmon of knowledge was caught, where Finn McCool burnt his thumb on the fish, or Jevna as he was known before he got it, before he burnt his thumb, as it were, before he got the wisdom. From next weekend for a week is National Heritage Week here in Ireland. I'm participating in 3 events during Heritage Week. The first is on Saturday at Cruban, where I'm talking about the significance of the Boyne, mythologically and archaeologically. Details of that are on the social media, in Facebook and Instagram. On Sunday afternoon, I'm giving a talk about Fourknocks at Clonalvy National School, and that's for the Clonalvy Historical and Heritage Society, I think they're called. So I'm looking forward to that. And then on Wednesday, I'm giving a talk on Wednesday evening at Mornington in Moran's pub there for Heritage Week. And that will be focused around the theme of animals and nature in mythology. So I hope to see some of you there. I think all of those events are free events. For the Cruban one, and Cruban is west of Meath, overlooking the Boyne. Spectacular location. It's a private venue, but if you intend to turn up, there is an Eventbrite link for that. But it won't cost you anything. It's a free event, but you do have to register for it. Yeah, it's been a crazy busy month. It really has. So getting the book finished and proofread and to print was a big challenge. And then when I received copies, of course, organizing the launch, thanks indeed to my devoted family for all their help and support in making that launch such a success. And of course, big thanks to Aoife Ruan and her staff at the High Lanes Gallery for helping it to be a major success. And then, as I say, day and night, really, on fulfilling the pre-orders. So I'm delighted that we're up to date, except for the orders that were made today on the website. So if you ordered the book today, hopefully the intention is to get it out into the post tomorrow. Yeah, it's breakneck speed in a way, but it's been also a very lovely, rewarding time. That's my 10th book, and here it is. And this is the subject of this evening's live stream, the story of Fourknocks and why it is that it's so important. And in the conclusion of the book, I say that it is one of the most important prehistoric monuments in the Western Hemisphere. So the reasons I make that bold claim, I hope, will become obvious during, during the course of this evening's live stream. First and foremost, most importantly, I've got to say hello to all of you. Johnny Wilson was actually the first to comment. He's in Dublin at the moment. So Johnny is in our time zone for a change. As I say, he's been here for several weeks. Not sure when you're heading home, Johnny, but it certainly was a pleasure to see you at Ishnock and at the High Lanes Gallery. And thanks for coming. And whenever you're heading home, safe journey home. We look forward to seeing you watching again from Texas. Elaine Dent-Lingenfelter is telling us it's a miserable 98 Fahrenheit, or that's 37 Celsius in Texas. So yeah, that's probably lower than usual, but higher than most parts of Europe at the moment, I would say. Good to see you, Elaine. Thanks for tuning in. Ali is saying hello from sunny Tucson. Spread the joy, Ali. And hello to all our friends in that part of the world. Monica Regley, who's normally watching from Switzerland, is in North Yorkshire this evening. And I asked her if she had perfected the accent, and her response was that I can share that. Anthony, no problem so far. I managed Liverpool. Liverpool! Were you over in Liverpool? Over with the Scousers. And of course, huge Irish links with Liverpool. A lot of Irish immigrants and their descendants in that part of the world. Donna Ferrer is saying hello out there. Excited to be here in real time. You're very welcome, Donna. It's a pleasure, as always, and I hope you're in good form. Helen Hirsch-Chader is saying hello to all of us from the Black Hills of South Dakota. Brilliant stuff. You are probably our only regular representative from that state, Helen. What a pleasure it is, of course. And by the way, I guess it is worse for them to manage my Swiss accent in my English. Well, better that you're speaking in English than speaking in Swiss German, I suppose. Apparently you told me, and someone else told me recently, that Swiss German is a vocal language only. It's not written. Fascinating stuff. John Main is in the house. Greetings onto it. Missed you for the past month or more. Was busy exploring passage tombs and standing stones in Ivera and County Kerry. Looking forward to today's chat. What a pleasure to welcome you, John, as always. One of Mythical Ireland's. Look, you're all big supporters. You're all great supporters. But of course, John is one of those who I've had the pleasure of meeting on several occasions. And also a patron. Speaking of patrons, there's Wayne Bird who's saying, good evening, Anthony. Hope everyone is well. Good job. The dream team was in the postal department. Looking at the amount of books there. Looking forward to reading the book. Yeah. The last batch was the biggest, the international orders. So mainland Britain, Europe, US and Canada mostly. And a significant number of books delivered to the post office early yesterday morning at 9 o'clock. As soon as they opened, they pulled up the blinds and just looked and went, oh, not this guy again. No, they're very good in the post office here, very patient with me. And look, the only reason I'm able to do what I do in terms of writing and publishing is because of your support. And without that, it just wouldn't happen. So thank you, each and every one of you. David Lynch is saying, hello, all, got the new book, looks great. Well done, Anthony. Did you smell it? I have a habit of smelling books, you know. There's a lovely smell of fresh print from it. Anyway, we'll talk more about that and on. I hope you get a chance to digest it, and I hope that it gives you a nice insight into that very important monument. Edina Sparks says, afternoon, Anthony, and the two. I hope everyone is well. I hope Tuesday Thompson tunes in, because it's just that kind of day. It's Tuesday for Tuesday Mythology. Stephen McHugh says, evening all, Trinonoa. Stephen, hope you're in good form. Barbara Murphy, driving home, so hello all, but can't comment for the next 15-20 minutes. Got the truck set to play the live stream. Brilliant. Yeah, and you don't need to comment. Keep your eyes on the road and keep your ears open. And hopefully you enjoy the stream, and you'll be able to comment when you get home, which hopefully will be before too long. Mary McGinty is commenting, asking Conor McGinty to join. Well, hello to the McGinties. You're very welcome to Live Irish Myths. Tom King, there he is. A beautiful evening at the Boyne Valley. Feet up for a bit and enjoy story time. Yeah, a well-earned break, I'm sure. Your name has entered several conversations in the past week or so. So hopefully lots of people heading in your direction soon. David Powderly is saying, hi, Anthony, looking forward to getting your new book. I might get you to sign it. Well, just so that you know, if you happen to order a copy of that book, Fourknocks, or any of my books on the Mythical Ireland website, you will get a personally signed copy. If you order two, you might be looking for one for a friend. Just send me an email to say, look, sign one to me and sign one to the friend or whatever. I'll share the link where you can order the book. And it's not a pre-order anymore. So if you order it, generally we try to dispatch the orders within 24 hours of receiving the order. So David, look forward to seeing your order. And yeah, absolutely will be perfectly happy to sign it for you. And like all the others, as I say, I hope that you enjoy it. Now, I have to scroll again because I've lost where I was. Barb Jordan is in the house. Hello, Barb. Good evening / afternoon to you. Hope you're in good form. Juan Carlos Smith is saying, greetings from Veracruz, Mexico. I'll read that book 100%. Brilliant stuff. Juan Carlos, you're very welcome to the live stream. Elaine said, I meant to say how much I enjoyed your article on the Irish Olympics. Yes, indeed, that article went out on Sunday evening / Monday morning to the Mythical Ireland newsletter, email newsletter subscribers. And if you want to subscribe to that, please do. It's free. And I suspect that you'll find the topics and the articles interesting. Generally, they're long read articles. They run generally to about 1,500 words. So thank you for that. Glad you enjoyed it. And of course, sent just as the Olympics had concluded, and the Irish team, the various members of the Irish Olympics team are either home already or coming home to a rapturous welcome, because they finished with 4 gold medals and 3 bronze medals, which is quite an achievement for a small island nation of 5 million people. we're definitely punching above our weight, if you excuse the boxing pun. One of those medal winners, of course, was Kelly Harrington. Richard Burgess is saying, congratulations on the Fourknocks release. Looking forward to reading as soon as the budget allows. Must take care of my dog. Squinkly's demands first. Well, the dogs always come first, don't they? The canine needs are very important. And of course, that is completely understandable. Looking forward to sending you a signed copy whenever the order does come in. No pressure or rush. Porrigo Comiskey's in the house. We are organising a walk and talk on Friday week at Lisnawilly Farm on Friday week. Dara Smith, the famed Cuchulainn historian, and Evan Lamb will be giving a talk on the double spiral that I found. We'll hopefully see you at it, Anthony, and the rest of the tour. I'll send you on the details when they're finalised. Brilliant stuff. And of course, Dara Smith, author of a couple of books about Irish mythology, if we're talking about the same person. And Evan Lamb, who runs the Irish rock art social media pages. Two brilliant people. And that'll be a fabulous event, Porrick. And the best of luck with it. Who else is in the house? Burr Whelan, I see, saying it's a lovely evening in Dublin. Yeah, it was cloudy here, and now the sun has come out. And you know what? It's always a bonus when it's not raining. Joe Butler, Auntie Joe, is saying hello from Colorado. Gorgeous day here. I hope all is well with my tour. Shared to Mythical Ireland community and Mythical Ireland Creatives page. Thank you very much for that, Joe. You're brilliant, as always. And your copy went out, I'm pretty sure, in this morning's post. So let us know when it arrives. Spud O'Hare is saying the new Fourknocks bling looks the part, doesn't it? I keep saying it's my bronze medal, because it's made of bronze. What a fabulous, I mean, the detail in that Tom has gone to extraordinary effort to replicate the very delicate pick marks that make up those chevrons of Fourknocks. And of course, the zigzags of Fourknocks are the primary emblems, along with what we would call the lozenges or diamonds. Mariana Dunn is saying hello from Alexandria in Virginia, where it is a pleasant day, and it's always a pleasant day when we have Mariana watching. Brilliant. Wendy Connolly saying Stan Cornett, archaeology as fresh as it gets. Tune in if you're on there in Florida. Brilliant. Maybe you might share a link also as to where we can tune in. Heather Marie Leaning is in the house and says, just walked in, loving the aurora photos, Anthony. Were you lucky enough to see any shooting stars? Yes, is the answer. Evening to it, and Tom King, hope you're all well. Well, myself and Finn were out at Doubt for about 2 hours. The aurora was reasonably short-lived. The good display lasted for about 15 minutes, and then it faded, and then the clouds rolled over. But before the clouds rolled over, we saw lots of meteors. The Perseid meteor shower, of course, one of the highlights of the meteor shower calendar. Finn lay down flat on the grass, and was oohing and ahhing at all these streaks coming through the sky. And then we saw bats. There were bats flying close by over our heads. So it was a really wonderful night because it was a calm, mild night. No wind, a light breeze, and no rain. And the stars early in the night, so from about 11 o'clock until about midnight, until the clouds rolled in, the stars were perfectly, pristinely crisp. It was the most beautiful night. And that after a long day, 12 hours of tours and talks. Didn't get enough sleep last night, so hopefully I'm going to make up for that tonight, but not before, of course, live streaming, because I realized that there was quite a demand. A lot of people on yesterday on the Mythical Ireland community in particular on Facebook saying, did I miss a memo? Is there a live stream this evening? And of course, I had neglected, being so busy, I had neglected to say that I wouldn't be live streaming yesterday. So apologies about that if you were waiting and it didn't happen. Jacqueline Kelly Adams is in the house. Hello from the Columbia Gorge to Mount Hood, Pacific Northwest on a beautiful sunny day, period. Congratulations on your book and much more to come. Yeah, that's book number 10. If I have the time and energy, I'd like to publish 50, maybe 100, But we'll see what we can manage, We'll see what we can do. Okay, so, wow, 20 minutes have passed already. Doesn't time fly when you're having fun? And when you're in the company of such wonderful and important guests as you all are. Just the usual reminder that if you want to support Mythical Ireland, remember that I am a full-time self-employed author and tour guide So if you want to support the work and make sure that it continues, please do consider becoming a patron of Mythical Ireland. And the link for that is scrolling constantly across the bottom of the screen throughout the live stream. Thanks to everybody who is already a patron, and a special word of thanks to all of you who made a contribution towards the costs of producing the book and publishing the book, which were not insignificant. And again, just to reiterate, as an independent, self-employed author, without that, it wouldn't happen. It's really straightforward. So thanks to you. I said, I hope the last time I was live, I think I did, that there were a couple of people who contributed on the day that the book had been sent to print. And I did email the printers and say, can I change a page? And they said, no, we're making the plates. So it was too late. And I think they were understanding about it, as in the people who had made a contribution. Some of you made anonymous contributions, so I wasn't able to name you personally, but you know who you are. And thank you very much. So this is the result. It's the third in the monograph series. And so just to briefly explain before I begin about Fourknocks itself, the monograph series sounds academic, but the reason I call them monographs, a monograph is basically a specialized study of one subject. In the case of monograph number 1, that subject is dissecting the story of Finn and the Salmon of Knowledge and its meaning, but also the location of it and the cosmology of it. So that was the first experiment in producing these special focused books. It's quite a thin book. It's €13, and again, available on the website. The second one was more substantial. Oh, by the way, that runs to, I think, 72 pages. Yeah. With comprehensive footnotes and a bibliography. The second one was the first ever book published about the goddess Bowen. She's the goddess of the River Boyne and the Milky Way, after whom the Brunabonia complex is dedicated, or at least that's what I believe. So that has been reprinted a couple of times. Thank you to everybody who has invested in it. And then for the Fourknocks, which, so if you look at them side by side, they're getting bigger. Now, the next one, I've decided, I think, the subject, it won't be as big as the Fourknocks one. It'll probably be somewhere along the size, somewhere between the Finn and the Bowen one. But when you see the spines of them, you'll see that the Fourknocks book is significantly thicker than the others, but they all share a commonality of design. So they all have. I want them all to look the same. In that it's obvious that they're part of a series. Mythical Ireland Monograph Series number 1, Mythical Ireland Monograph Series number 2, Mythical Ireland Monograph Series number 3, and of course the aim is to produce books that will be accessible to a wide audience, but which are based on scholarly sources. So we want good research, and where as far as possible good writing and some new insights as well. But they're all A5, which is half of A4, so they're nice. They're a nice compact size. In the case of Fourknocks, the Fourknocks book runs to almost 200 pages, so 196 pages. And so is by far the largest and the most comprehensive of the series so far. And I'm feeling that it's probably going to be the biggest one. I don't know how many there will be eventually, but as new ideas come forward for the monograph series, I will endeavor to. What I'm trying to do is write books that will be pioneering from the point of view that they'll be dealing with subjects for which there isn't a book. So if you want to read about Fourknocks, until the publication of this book, if you wanted to read about Fourknocks, you would have to consult a number of archaeological books. There's 13 pages of bibliography in the back of the book. So the works of PJ Hartnett, the archaeologist, George Ogan, Carlton Jones, Robert Hensey, Elizabeth Sheed Tuig, Michael J. O'Kelly, Sean P. O'Riordan, a lot. And as I said at the launch, as an independent and non-academic author and publisher, I'm conscious always that I stand on the shoulders of giants. And the giant, in this case, the main giant, was the late, great PJ Hartnett, Patrick Hartnett, or Paddy as he was known to family and friends, who passed away at a relatively young age, and was a bright star. One of those great archaeologists to emerge from the University College Cork, and would have been a contemporary of Sean O'Riordan and, of course, Michael J. O'Kelly, who excavated Newgrange. Larry Haggin says, hi, Anthony Opal as well. I'm wondering if you ever put any thought into the Giants having a hand in assembling them. No, Larry, is the quick answer, because I don't believe in giants. I believe the monuments were built by humans. And that's what we find. We find their bones buried in the tombs. So there's no archaeological evidence to suggest there were giants, not that I'm aware of. Anne McCallum is in the house. Good evening, good afternoon to you, Anne. We're happy that you're here. Caroline Dash says, sorry, I'm late. Now, normally, and I don't know where it is at the moment, I would produce the red book and take your name. But it was pointed out that as a result of failing to show up completely last night, that I would have to enter my own name in the red book. So the red book's been put aside for this week, because it would be very two-faced of me to take names for detention for people who are late for the lecture, given that I was so late last night that I'm actually 24 hours late. Barbara Murphy's home and ready to catch up on comments. Well, we're glad that you got there safely and that you're able to comment. Giants in the land, perhaps in position rather than statue. Yeah, well, on that subject, there were certainly giants in mythology. And, of course, I've written about the High Man, which looks like the giant effigy of a man stretching 12 miles high from head to toe in the landscape from County Louth down to the River Boyne. So, yeah, that kind of giant, yes, if that's what we're talking about. So, where to start? Yeah, start at the beginning, says you. So the first chapter is based in an introduction to Fourknocks, its situation in the landscape, a brief mention of its archaeology and its basic features, how you access it by going to the White's house and getting the key and paying €20, a €20 returnable deposit for that key. If you're interested in going to Fourknocks and you don't know where to pick up the key, if you have Google Maps on your phone, you just type Fourknocks key pickup, and it will show you the exact house you need to go to. It's about 1.5 kilometers, I think, a kilometer anyway, between 0.5 mile and 1 mile away from the monument. It's not that easy to find from the directions that are given on the sign, but much easier when you have it on Google Maps, Yeah. And then, of course, a mention of the landscape of that area. And of course, this is southeastern County Meath, which throughout the history of Ireland since the Ice Age has been the most fertile agricultural land. And of course, these being farmers who had introduced cattle and crops and goats and sheep to Ireland, farming was very important to them. And that may be the reason that the largest monuments of the Neolithic in Ireland are to be found in the Boyne Valley, Newgrange, Louth and Douth, and the associated complex there. Because basically the land provided them with the biggest surplus and the opportunity to build monuments during the down times in the agricultural calendar. Mike Grealish is saying, good morning from Auckland, New Zealand. Sunny day here. Brilliant stuff, Mike. A very good Wednesday morning to you. Most of us are still in Tuesday, so I hope it's a lovely day down there. Thanks for tuning in. Always a pleasure to welcome the most distant of our viewers. What a great thing we have going in the ability to live stream from home with a simple setup, something we couldn't do a generation ago. The idea of a live broadcast was confined to very expensive television studios, so we're very lucky. There is, on an early page spread, a map of the Fourknocks area in LiDAR, highlighting the main monumental features, the Neolithic passage tombs, the Bronze Age barrow mounds, the henges, the late Neolithic embanked henges, and of course the possible henges, because there are 3 recorded henges and another 3 or 4 possible henges. And I'm delighted to have been able to include that, courtesy of Dr. Steve Davis of University College Dublin. So I'm very grateful to have been able to use that. Yeah, so the introduction itself is like a very good, just reading that would give you a very good idea of the monument. When people go to Fourknocks, of course, because there's no official tour guides, you get a key and you go on your own. A lot of people go on their own or with a small group. There isn't much in the way of signage. There's a small sign with a few sentences of information on it that tell you very, very little about the monument. So a lot of people go to Fourknocks and they don't really appreciate what they're seeing because they know it's an ancient monument, but there's no guidebook. Well, there wasn't up until this was published, and they're mostly relying on either information that they've gleaned from the internet and social media, or of course, some of them have gone digging a little bit deeper into some of the books, some of the archaeological texts and the authors of at least some of those I've mentioned already. The next chapter is a brief history of Ireland. So I felt this was important, and it's a very nice way of introducing why is it that in the Neolithic there was this sudden, emergence of large stone monuments. Megalithic means large stone, and megalithic monuments are those that are made out of large stones. Neolithic refers to the time period, the New Stone Age. So we've three Stone Ages: the Paleolithic, which mostly coincides with the Ice Age. So there's very little evidence for Paleolithic activity in Ireland, but we do know there were human beings in Ireland during the Ice Age, in the warmer periods between the colder periods. There were 6 Ice Ages in total, lasting about 1.6 million years. So the so-called Ice Age, according to the new book, and of course some of this is based on the wonderful work of J.P. Mallory, his book, The Origins of the Irish, which is one of the best books that you can read in terms of the emergence of the Irish people, genetically, culturally, linguistically, all of that, and of course monumentally. The Paleolithic, meaning the Old Stone Age, the Mesolithic, the hunter-gatherer, the Middle Stone Age, the hunter-gatherer era, and then the Neolithic, when farming arrived with a new arrival of people who had their genetic origins in Anatolia, in Turkey, and they started building monuments. And a little bit about the oldest monuments in Ireland. The oldest Stone Age monument for which we have a date is the Paul-na-Brone Dolmen in the Burren in County Clare, 3800 BC. The oldest passage tombs of those at Carrowmore in County Sligo, and I think the oldest date there is 3700 BC, and that's a whole 5 centuries before, 500 years before Newgrange is built. So the older ones in the west, and the more decorated and ostentatious and large-scale ones in the east. Fourknocks is an exception to that because it's quite a small monument. Small, but as many people have commented, there are good goods in small parcels, you know. Just checking to see if anyone else has arrived that I might have missed. I don't think so. If you do arrive and you're lurking and you haven't said hello, feel free to say hello and join in the conversation. And then the next chapter is called The Excavation of Fourknocks. And there are photographs taken during the excavation. And that was done entirely in 1950 over a period of 9 weeks, beginning on the 11th of September 1950. And the excavations of Fourknocks belong to the era of the proper beginnings of scientific archaeological excavation. Kind of the everything that kind of happened really before the 1930s in terms of excavation of monuments in Ireland wasn't very scientific, and a lot of it was actually treasure hunting and grave robbing and antiquarians who fancied that they knew something about Irish monuments, but they didn't know a whole lot generally. One exception would be Eugene Conwell in the 1860s excavating at Loughcrew. His excavations and the detail of those reasonably good for the period in which he was excavating. The phases, of course, of the construction of Fourknocks are investigated, and the layout of the monument. But this includes a very, very special photograph, which is from the Norman Ashe collection. Norman Ashe was a photographer who basically flew around in airplanes in the middle of the 20th century at a time when no one else was doing it, or few, very few, because of course flying in an airplane was the preserve of wealthy people, and long before cheap flights to foreign destinations. And he flew over the excavations at Norman Ashe in 1950 and captured a wonderful photograph and a very busy scene. So there's at least 11, I think it is, at least 11. Now, I have the original high-resolution photograph, and I've been able to identify 11 people in the photograph. And in the center of the chamber, there's a man in a trench coat waving at the photographer. And I was absolutely delighted that PJ Hartnett, the archaeologist who excavated Fourknocks, that his daughter, Brenda McMahon, attended the launch of the book and spoke at the launch of the book and contributed to a section which we'll get to momentarily, a little bit of biographical information about her late father. And she said that, yeah, from the height and the way he's standing and the hair, it's difficult to see. It's not that detailed when you zoom in, but she thinks that that is highly likely to be her father leading the excavations. And at this point, the entire chamber has been revealed, and the squares have been cut away, and some of the section bridges still remain. Strewn about the scene are wheelbarrows, shovels, pickaxes, a sign of a busy activity. So such a brilliant addition, I felt, to the book. Let me just quickly check. Who Gadarn is here. Well, we're glad that you are there and here, kind of. Joan Schroeder is in Newport in Oregon. Hello, indeed. A very good early afternoon to you, Joan, and all our viewers, of course, in the Pacific Northwest. A big pocket, as I'm always saying, of viewers in the Pacific Northwest. A ground plan of Fourknocks showing its layout and the design of its chamber and its curb of loose gravel, which can't be seen today. It's not a curb of big stones like you see at some of the other passage tombs, and its orientation not far off due north, you know. Then there follows a short few pages of photographs, a photo from inside the chamber, photos of the recesses or side chambers under here, the three recesses, and on this side the sill stones that demark the sacred area where the burials, the human bones were, the cremations and interments were made. Interments, now inhumations, behind those sill stones. And then a spread of aerial photographs of the monument of Fourknocks, and a couple of them showing you the ridge upon which it is situated. And in the distance, in those two images, you can see the Irish Sea, and one from directly above. So, Hartnett's conjectural stages of construction of the monument, what that looked like. And there's two sets of drawings there showing us the hypothetical construction stages of the monument. And one of the fascinating aspects of Fourknocks, of course, is that during the construction, a very large corbelled roof made it mostly of stone was constructed, but there wasn't enough stone found during the excavation to imagine that the roof had ever been completed in stone. And Hartnett conjectured that, well, not conjectured, I think it was based on the evidence that the upper section of the roof was actually made of timber and possibly covered in thatching, and it was probably supported by a huge wooden a timber post, because just off the center of the floor of the monument, as shown in the ground plan, was a post hole, which likely was a support for the upper part of the roof. One of the other fascinating aspects of Fourknocks is that the large stones and the decorated stones are all made of different types of sandstone, which wouldn't be untypical for decorated large megalithic passage tombs. But the smaller stones of the walls of the chamber and the roof were made of local limestone, which has these nodular concretions of chert, which is fascinating because there wasn't much flint at Fourknocks, and something Hartnett remarked upon is that they don't seem to have had a supply of good quality, abundant flint in the area. And of course, chert is known to archaeologists as poor man's flint, because if you can't find flint to make your tools, chert is the next best thing. A short biographical section about the excavator, Patrick Joseph Hartnett. He was born in Cork, educated in the south of the country, had an opportunity to go to Germany, believe it or not, to study archaeology, but then World War II broke out and he didn't get to go. I think that's to our benefit, because if he'd gone to Germany, who knows what might have ended up happening, and maybe he might never have excavated Fourknocks. So there's a lovely photo provided by his daughter and granddaughter, and a few other photos. This one showing Hartnett with several other people in the excavated chamber of Fourknocks on what looks like a cold winter's day, and the stone behind him, there's the chalked in megalithic art. That's something archaeologists don't do now because it's abrasive, is to chalk in the megalithic art. But that was, of course, before Fourknocks had a roof, and we'll get to that. And a picture of Hartnett in the 60s, and that was the decade in which he passed away. I think he passed away in 1966. And Professor Michael J. O'Kelly, who excavated Newgrange and was considered by many to be at least one of the leading, if not the leading archaeologist of the 20th century, the leading Irish archaeologist of the 20th century, paid this tribute on his friend PJ Hartnett's passing in 1966. Throughout an intensive 25 years of devoted service to Irish archaeology, during which he accomplished an incredible amount, it can truly be said that he never made an enemy. His manifest honesty of purpose, his happy, friendly disposition, and his personal humility and selflessness made it impossible for any of us to refuse what he asked of us. We will miss him greatly. And on the left-hand page of that spread, part of his typed resume, the original document, again provided by his family. A fascinating insight into the man, without whom we would know nothing about Fourknocks. He visited there in 1949 at the invitation of a relative, and was shown the low mound of Fourknocks, and was very intrigued by one stone in particular, which he saw what he thought might be megalithic art on. And that was what prompted him to come back the following year. That stone F, by the way, is the stone that he saw megalithic art on, and I think that was what prompted him. It's clear, I think, from reading his own excavation paper, his own academic paper, which was published in 1957, a whole 7 years after the excavations. He published an academic paper. My own copy of that is quite tattered at this point because it has been accessed so thoroughly and regularly during the course of writing the Fourknocks book. So I'm going to have to try and find some way of maybe bringing it to a binder and finding out if they can't put some sort of a hard cover on it and just protecting it from further damage. It's just purely because it was referenced so much. The book, my book on Fourknocks, has around 350 footnotes. 345. So at all times, if you want to follow up on something I've said in the book, you can go to the footnotes and a 13-page bibliography, which is reasonably comprehensive for a book of its size. The following chapter then is about the human remains. It's a very short chapter. We don't know that much about the human remains. We know that there was an estimate for around 65 people interred in Fourknocks, including adults and children. Some cremated, some inhumed. Cremated about 31 or so, inhumed about 34 or so. So not quite 50-50, more inhumed than cremated. But a new study of those bones being carried out currently, and that's a later chapter in the book, will, I think, reveal a lot more about that. A very interesting question I was asked yesterday in Fourknocks by one of my tour visitors, which I've never heard asked before, and I thought was a brilliant question to which I will endeavour to get an answer, was how many children on average did Neolithic women have? And it's a question I've never been asked, and I don't know if it's been addressed. I'm not sure that I've ever read the answer to that in any of the academic publications. So that's one I intend to follow up on, because I think it's a very interesting question. The answer that I gave was not many, because most people died before 30. And a lot of women died in childbirth in the Neolithic. There were no health interventions such as we have today, you know. Thank you, Anne. And of course, Anne, your copy of the Fourknocks book, your signed copy, is on its way to you. It is in the system. And let us hope that it gets there sooner rather than later. But of course, the main thing is let us hope it gets there safe and sound. Just to remind people, if you are having trouble with the stream on Facebook, it can be glitchy. Generally, the stream on YouTube is better. So if you want to switch over to the YouTube channel, the Mythical Ireland YouTube channel, if you do that, please do subscribe to the channel for notifications of future videos and live streams. The following section is about the finds, and this is one of the most rewarding for me, because in Hartnett's paper there are drawings of some of the finds and monochrome plates, black and white to you and me, of some of the finds. The finds, as far as I knew, had never been published in colour. So myself and Richard Moore, back in late February and early March, made several visits to the National Museum, where the wonderful staff there facilitated us not just choosing which finds to look at in terms of selecting the main representative finds from the excavation for photography for the book, but actually they allowed us to handle many of them. Now, we were wearing specialist gloves. I cannot tell you what an honor it was. I believe this is the first time that this artifact has ever been published in color, and that is the pièce de résistance from the excavation, a carved antler pin object. I talk about how, briefly, I talk about how important red deer were to the Neolithic people, who probably reintroduced them to Ireland, not for their hides, not for their meat, but for their antlers, which seem to have been very sacred to the Neolithic people, because archaeologists have found lots of objects carved from antler, red deer antler. And indeed, if you remember the episode we did a couple of years ago about the Sligo bones, the amazing study there of the Sligo bones, excavated in 1911, but only studied in forensic detail in the past decade, revealed a most remarkable sequence of events at Carrowkeel in County Sligo, where the first activity was the burial of antler objects before humans were buried in the tombs at Carrowkeel on the Brickleave Mountains. They placed antler objects. So this is the famous antler. Now, it's two pictures of the same object, and it was calcined from fire, so it was probably burnt or cremated with its owner, and it was ritually broken before being deposited in the end recess, which was the recess that contained the most human bone material. My speculation is that because this object has chevrons, or what you and I would call zigzags, carved into it, that my speculation is that this belonged, it was a personal object of, you can see the chevrons in the upper part of it there, I hope, the zigzags, carved beautifully. My speculation is that this belonged to the artist who picked out many of the zigzag patterns in Fourknocks. A bone pin with a hole in it. And now that's much bigger. The real object is about that length. But I remember when the staff who were handling the objects handed this to myself and Richard, I nearly didn't want to handle it. It was so delicate, but it's polished. It's beautiful. And other pins made, hang on a second, just make sure I get this right, skewer-like pins manufactured from the metacarpal bones of sheep. And they were found in all three recesses, but the most numerous in the southern recess. Some of the pendants made from stone and bone and other objects, fascinating. The everyday jewellery and objects worn by the people of the Stone Age. Objects from Fourknocks 2, which was a cremation site. There's a short chapter about Fourknocks 2, a monument next door to Fourknocks 1 that was excavated in 1951 and 52. This, a very badly damaged and burned antler pin object, broken into 4 pieces, and some pins. So again, never photographed or in colour before. Some of the stone balls and marbles found, I speculated that these were game objects, and some of the lithics, the tools. And as Hartnett commented, there weren't very many of those from the Fourknocks monuments. And some of the other objects, some possible axe heads, some stones, including some quartz, a quartz crystal, or quartz pebbles, and a quartz crystal, and other objects that might be a whetstone and other tools and bits and pieces. The megalithic art of Fourknocks, and no visit to Fourknocks is complete without an examination of its megalithic art. And of course, that is one of its standout features. When people go there, they're struck by the fact that there's this beautiful megalithic art, a lot of which is in an excellent state of preservation. A big reason for that is because it looks like during the period in the Neolithic, when the monument was still being used for burials, as I said earlier on, the roof collapsed, covered in the whole chamber, covered all the burials, and they don't seem to have made any effort to rebuild it. Instead, they continued burying people, but they buried them in the passage, the entrance passageway, which was the only accessible part of the monument at that post-collapse stage. But some of the art, the reason for its meticulous preservation is because it was protected from Irish rain and weather for 5,000 years until PJ Hartnett and his team excavated there in 1950. So another plan of Fourknocks, but showing the principal decorated stones and their location around the monument. And then a photographic section, photographs of all the known megalithic art of Fourknocks, and a brief description, not just of the megalithic art and what it might mean. Hartnett had ideas. He thought, for instance, on stone A here, the lintel stone belonging to the entrance, which is now inside the monument for protection from the weather. He thought he could see a female figure, perhaps a deity. And that's the sort of thing that modern archaeologists would say, no, we think Irish megalithic art is abstract and non-representational. But there's different views on that, and I've given both sides of that discussion in many of my books and live streams and articles over the years. The jury is still out on that. But certainly when you go to Fourknocks, it is one of the most impressive aspects. Stone, of course, Hartnett labelled the stones with letters and numbers. Stone A, Stone B with the circular items, and a very worn spiral or set of concentric circles, because that part of the stone was probably exposed to the weather for a long time after the collapse. Stone C, which is the best known, I think, and most photographed of all the Fourknocks stones, meticulously preserved megalithic art from over 5,000 years ago. Stone D, which a lot of people don't see because it's up on top of the wall, and aspects of it that haven't been photographed since the excavation. Stone E, the lintel above the end recess, and its repetition of the principal features of the Fourknocks megalithic art, the diamonds, or what we call the lozenges, and the zigzags or chevrons. Stone F, which is the right-hand recess lintel, which is also pictured on the cover. This is from Stone F. And that was the stone, as I say, that led Hartnett to excavate Fourknocks, because he kind of knew that it was megalithic art. Some of the best example of incised megalithic art, not picked, but scored with a very fine blade of flint in the entrance passage, Stone 4. The one that's called the human face of Fourknocks, that I say, if it's a human face, it was picked out by the Neolithic equivalent of a Picasso. Some delicate picking on a stone, stone 17, which kind of faces the passage right adjacent to the end recess, that a lot of people don't see. They miss it while they're there. And some very fine incised art on stone 27 in the right hand recess, including this double lozenge or double diamond. A diamond within a diamond. Stone 33, which is actually in the passageway on the right, people walk by it and never see it, contains a set of 8 diamonds or lozenges arranged in either 2 columns of 4 or 4 pairs of 2, depending on what way you want to look at that. And again, that's something that's missed a lot. I have a short chapter about a lonely spiral in Fourknocks and how I theorized that was the only decorated stone in Fourknocks that would have received the direct light of the sun in the Neolithic, because the passageway, as we demonstrated earlier, is oriented too far to the north for the sun or the moon to ever be able to directly shine in there and illuminate the chamber, like Newgrange, for instance. And Newgrange points to Fourknocks, which is investigated in the chapter about the astronomical alignment of Fourknocks and the theories that myself and Richard Moore have about that, which ties in with the Swan constellation Cygnus, which would have been visible from inside the chamber. Its principal star, the bright star that we call today Deneb, the tail of the Swan. And of course, the fact that both Newgrange and Meath, remember, Newgrange points to, Newgrange and Fourknocks. Newgrange points to Fourknocks. They're not intervisible because of intervening hills. They're both cruciform in plan, and that's demonstrated here in this diagram. These are to scale approximately. That's the cruciform chamber of Newgrange. This is cruciform Fourknocks, but it's overlaid by this very large egg-shaped chamber floor. And we speculated that the significance of the whooper swan, which migrates to Newgrange, to the Brunabonia complex in wintertime, that we speculate that that's been happening since prehistory, and that that is evident, at least in part. You couldn't call it definitive evidence, but it's certainly suggested by some of the principal myths of Newgrange, which involve swans. Of course, the major story there being Ashlinga Enguso, in which the deity Engus Og, who takes over the ownership of Newgrange from either Alkmaar or Dagda, depending on which myth you read, had to take the form of a swan to be with his lover, Care, who changed into a swan, and they flew into Newgrange. It's there in the myths, folks. And then a chapter dealing with alignment to other monuments. So it's fascinating that from the chamber of Fourknocks, when you look out, you're looking at the hill of Mullatealing, and there's a monument up on there, probably, I think, a late Neolithic henge, but there's a bit of a dispute about that. And the fact that the Fourknocks passage points to the Baltray standing stones and some of the sources, some of the principal sources for the stones used in the construction of Newgrange. That could be a coincidence, of course, and I admit that, but I felt it was too important to leave out, and it's good, as far as I'm concerned, to speculate. To speculate is to accumulate, and I don't mean that in any, oh, there's a stunning red sky out. Oh, I wish I was at Newgrange right now on my camera, but I'm here with you. That's more important. Now, let me just quickly check, because I've been talking for a while, just to make sure that I haven't missed any newcomers or any important. Caroline Dash says, roll on payday. Brilliant stuff, Caroline. I hope you enjoy the book when you order it and receive it. Helen, yes, your copy is on its way, and I hope it gets there quickly, but safely, of course. Shehan She says, Gia Gutch, I'm a lurker, but I've enjoyed many of your episodes. Brilliant stuff. And of course, that's perfectly okay to lurk, you know. Delighted to welcome you here, and lovely to see you and to see your comment. Hope you enjoy the content. Silent Pilgrim says, oh no, I'm late again. Good evening. Well, I won't be taking any names in the red book this evening for reasons that I've mentioned earlier, because I'm 24 hours late for yesterday's episode. So if I start putting people's names in the red book, I'll have to put my own name with a big circle around it, you know. The photos are fabulous, says Adina. Thank you very much. I keep leaning in for a better look. Definitely need my own copy. So most of the photography is mine. The objects, the artifacts, those photographs were provided by the National Museum, and they are wonderful photographs. Let me continue. Fourknocks 2, a brief chapter just to tell you about Fourknocks 2, which is the neighbouring monument, which was also excavated by Hartnett. But the reason it's not open to the public, apart from the fact that it's on private land, is the fact that it's a monument that you couldn't walk into anyway. It's a very complex monument, and it looks like there was a trench used for cremations, leading some archaeologists like Gabriel Cooney, Professor Gabriel Cooney, and Carlton Jones and others to suggest that it was a cremation monument. And if you look at this aerial photograph, you'll see Fourknocks 2 there and Fourknocks 1 there. And the thinking is that they used Fourknocks 2 to cremate many of the dead, although we've seen that only less than 50% of the people buried in Fourknocks were cremated. But they used Fourknocks 2 for the cremations and then Fourknocks 1 for the burials. There's then a chapter on other possible tombs at Fourknocks, including the Great Mound. When I say great, it's not as big as most of those at Brunabonia, but it's a lot bigger than Fourknocks. And that's the one that supports the monument known as Cadell's Folly at Herbertstown, or previously known as Harbourstown. And that is an 18th century gazebo, a folly. But the mound upon which it is built, highly likely to be a prehistoric tumulus, possibly a Bronze Age mound, but archaeologists favour, I think, a passage to him. A chapter on late Neolithic henges, the closest one, a few hundred metres to the north of Fourknocks, is the Fourknocks Micknanstown henge, so called because it straddles the two townlands of Fourknocks and Micknanstown. The Heathtown henge, which was once a gigantic embanked henge at the hill of Heathtown, which is just 1.5 kilometres as the crow flies northwest of Fourknocks, less than a mile away. And then the Micknanstown henge. So not the Fourknocks, Micknanstown henge, just Micknanstown, which I have a video on my YouTube channel, because I believe it's the only late Neolithic henge in Ireland that you can drive over, because at some point in recent centuries, a road was built over it. But rather than ploughing through the monument and destroying part of it, they just built the road over it. So when you're driving along the road, you go over a little hump and down into a hollow. And then after, less than 100 meters, you go down into a bit of a dip and up over again. And that's you basically driving over the embankment of a monument that is likely to date to about 4,500 to 5,000 years old. And then a discussion of possible henges, one of which was identified by Dr. Steve Davis in LiDAR around Fourknocks 2. And I've identified in Google Earth imagery taken in 2022 possible segmented double ditch crop marks of that possible henge. One in the forest at Grange, in the townland of Grange, another possible henge, and then a large enclosure at Herbertstown, which was indicated on the LiDAR map, and a new chapter. As this book was finished and pretty much ready to go, you'll know, many of you, because you'll have seen the posts about it on the 7th of July. While flying my drone over the aforementioned Heath town, which is the site of that gigantic, or at the ruins or segmented ruins of a gigantic, such a gorgeous scale. Look at that. That's amazing. Tom King, I hope you're photographing that sky, or anyone else who's in the Boyne Valley, and please share the pictures on the Mythical Ireland community. I found the crop marks of what looks like a very substantial hilltop enclosure, a double ditched enclosure that has been tentatively earmarked as a ceremonial enclosure, highly likely to be prehistoric. But we have to speculate then as to what it might be. Is it a late Neolithic henge? Is it a Bronze Age hill fort? Is it an Iron Age fort? Is it or an Iron Age palisaded enclosure? Is it even earlier than all that, a causewayed enclosure from the early Neolithic? We won't know until further investigation, but the crop marks certainly reveal something interesting, which is not just the double-ditched enclosure, but within it, a smaller double-ringed feature, which may be a barrow, or it might be even a four-poster or something like that. So lots more to be found out. But that was a new discovery. And the amazing thing is, it is within the curtilage of the larger embanked enclosure of Heathtown. So it's a monument within a monument. The question would remain, which came first? And if you've seen the post I had a while ago about Faughan Hill in County Meath, not far from Bohermeen, where Tom King's Forge is based, the reputed burial place of Niall of the Nine Hostages, the famous High King of Tara. Faughan Hill, you'll have seen, I think, on my blog, and it's there on the website if you need to go back to it, where the archaeologists have found the remains of two very large hilltop enclosures, one of which is Neolithic and one of which is Bronze Age. Fascinating stuff. Speaking of the Bronze Age, the next chapter is about the Bronze Age at Fourknocks and investigating the remnants, including barrows, ploughed out barrows like these two ring barrows that I've discovered in Google Earth imagery following the drought of 2018. The remains of what is said to be a stone circle at Greenanstown, the Jack Stones. And then, of course, an important chapter, because it's indicated in the title of the book, Mythology, the place name of Fourknocks, exploring the possible place name and the myth and folklore. Luchar Alva, that complex that is mentioned in Aided Na E, and based on the wonderful research of that scholar Kelly Kilpatrick, and also the possibility that the Fourknocks mounds may have been part of the cemetery that was recorded in the Denshamakus as being Cerna, Cerna, which is highly likely to be an Irish word that simply means cairns. And there are townlands to the north/northwest of Fourknocks, Cairns West and Cairns East, where we don't think there are any surviving cairns, but may have been part of that complex. And then the connection with Alva, Lea Alva, Luchar Alva, and of course the modern village of Clonalva, which in this aerial image is shown in this oval, which is, what is it? I'm not sure exactly how far it is. I mean, it's no more than 2 kilometers from Fourknocks, So I speculate about the significance of Alva. In terms of the name, Fourknocks, na Fourknock, The cold hills, yeah, maybe. Fourknocks, a bare or naked place, yes, possibly. Brendan Matthews, the historian, he contends that the name means the four knocks, as in the four mounds, and that's something that is depicted in an 1812 grand jury map of Meath, where the four mounds are not just shown, but the words "the four knocks" are written above them, and that's slightly debated. That's debated by Irish scholars who would say, well, why would it be called the Fourknocks? Four is an English word, you know. Um, so that's maybe something that needs further exploration. And then, of course, a little bit east, on the eastern end of the Fourknocks Ridge, a place called Cheer Ree, the land of the king. And the belief there is that the eastern part of the Fourknocks Ridge was one of the summer residences of the High Kings of Tara. And there's an aerial view of Cadal's Folly and the mound upon which it is situated. And that looks towards Cheer Ree and the Irish Sea in the east. That photo was taken the day before the book was sent to print. It was the last thing that was needed to complete the book. So it's been an interesting period. And then I consulted, a number of months ago, I consulted the National Monument Service and said, do you have any photographs from the excavations of Fourknocks? Now, I was very happy to be able to include the Norman Ashe aerial photograph. But so they came up with some photos that showed Fourknocks at the completion of the excavations, and it didn't have a roof. See, Hartnett couldn't reconstruct the roof because there wasn't enough stone to make it. And a lot of the stones that had fallen in the Neolithic from the roof were broken. So he couldn't reconstruct the roof. So for a few years after the excavations, it was left without a roof. But that couldn't continue. Why? Because the megalithic art would have been worn down by Irish rain and wind and frost. So in 1957, the Board of Works designed and constructed a special concrete roof for Fourknocks. Now, some people don't like it, but most people like the fact that Fourknocks is a lovely interior with the light that streams down through specially constructed holes or slits in that concrete roof. But they provided me with photographs that I had never seen before. And at the launch, I asked the archaeologist, has anybody ever seen these before? And they said no. And these are photographs showing the design or the construction and installation of the roof of Fourknocks in 1957. And the concrete dome, so here's the timber frame they used to create and pour the concrete and rebar. And the completed concrete roof was later covered in grass sods. So when you approach Fourknocks today, it has the appearance of a grass mound. I think it's ingenious. I think it's brilliant. And it protects the megalithic art. A short chapter on that aforementioned new study of the bones. That's being led by Dr. Jessica Smith. She's an associate professor of archaeology in University College Dublin, in conjunction with Dr. Johnny Gebber, a senior lecturer in human osteoarchaeology in University of Edinburgh. And they're going to be trying to do a number of things, studying the bones, the human bones, the cremated and uncremated, that were retrieved during Hartnett's excavations in 1950, were deposited with the National Museum of Ireland in Dublin in the 1950s, and have been sitting there in storage ever since. Now, modern scientists are going to use, 74 years later, modern scientists are going to re-examine those to try to determine how many adults and children were there, how many cremated and uncremated. They're going to try to get carbon dating. So we will hopefully, in the next year or two, have the first definitive carbon dates from Fourknocks, which might help us to answer the question, is it the same age as Newgrange? Is it slightly younger? Is it slightly older? The fact that Newgrange points to it, as do some of the cairns at Lough Crew, suggests it was already there while those monuments were being built. So that'll be interesting. And then ancient DNA, where possible, if they can extract some DNA, and to find out, are there relationships, for instance, with that individual found in Newgrange during its excavations, whose DNA reveals that he was the product of a first-degree incestuous union, and also indicates that he was distantly related to some of the people buried at Carrowkeel and in Millen Bay in County Down, I think, in Northern Ireland, in the Neolithic. So I think that is, when that study is published, I suspect I'm going to have to produce a revised and expanded edition of the book, because I do think that's going to yield some very, very interesting information. Anyway, I'm very glad I contacted Dr. Smith by phone, and I said, I've been told you're doing this study and I'm publishing a book about Fourknocks. And she was delighted to hear that, by the way, that there's going to be a book about Fourknocks. And I said, it would be remiss of me to publish that book without mentioning your study. Would you mind telling me whatever you could tell me about it without preempting, what that will reveal? So she did. And I'm really delighted about that, because I do believe, I call it, that chapter is called a New Study of Ancient Bones. But I do say that it has the potential to write a whole new chapter in the story of Fourknocks. We await with excited anticipation the publication of their results. Second to last chapter is one called The Future of Fourknocks. And I've explored the controversial area of modern access to monuments. Fourknocks is one of the few passage tombs in Ireland that we can still access. Cairn at Loughcrew was locked in 2018 due to fears over subsidence and hasn't been reopened since, although a condition survey is about to take place there. The cairns on the Brickleave Mountains at Carrowkeel are going to be locked because of vandalism that occurred there last year. So basically, this chapter is about exploring the theme of access and the privilege of that access and how lucky we are to be able to, but also encouraging people to look after it. Use it, not use it, but look after it or lose access is the simple point of view. And Fourknocks is not without its damage. Last week, while I was there, somebody had smeared what looked like a blackberry or a blueberry along the Stone Sea chevrons, the zigzags. And they may have thought they were engaging in some sort of harmless pagan ritual, but you're not supposed to rub the megalithic art with anything because it's abrasive. You're actually damaging it. So, like, if everybody who goes in there does that, it'll be vandalized, and the OPW and the National Monument Service will say nobody's allowed in there anymore. That's what will happen. So I just felt it was very important to speak my mind on that issue, and also to say that more investment is needed in the protection and preservation of monuments. That I felt that although the National Monument Service and OPW do a great job, they clearly don't have enough resources. They just don't. And I'm sorry, they may say differently, but I'm an independent author and researcher. I don't speak on their behalf. I say what I see, and what I see is the increased incidence of vandalism of monuments over the past 5 to 10 years, very precious Neolithic monuments. And we're going to have to address that one way or the other. It may be a very small minority of people are doing the damage, but my opinion is that the answer is not to prevent access to everybody because of the actions of the few. And one of the arguments that I make in that chapter is that there's no decent interpretive signage at a lot of these precious monuments. And I made the argument that at Mellifont Abbey in County Louth, the largest and the first Cistercian abbey in Ireland, founded in the 12th century, the interpretive signage is amazing. It's detailed, it's got artists' impressions and reconstructions of what all the buildings look like. It's got detailed information about the place. And if you go there alone and the OPW guides are not on duty, you can basically find out the entire story of Mellifont by just reading the signs. And you know what? There's been no vandalism at Mellifont Abbey. Food for thought. The last chapter, and getting round to the subject of tonight's live stream, which is the significance of Fourknocks. Fourknocks was one of the first passage tombs to be properly scientifically excavated. Remember, it was excavated 12 years before the excavations of both Newgrange and Knowth began. Although it's a small monument, it's very significant. It is the largest chamber of any excavated Irish passage tomb. It shows us, excuse me, and I'll read this in a moment. It shows us that the builders of the monument were fallible. They didn't have a school of engineering and, structural engineering and construction techniques. They did what they could do with the materials that were available. and the structure failed. It proves that they were human, as does Newgrange, because a lot of people forget that Newgrange suffered a cairn slip, a rolling out of the stones, within 5 centuries of its construction. So they did their best with what they had. They hoped to create permanent monuments. I'm sure they'd be impressed if they were to turn up today and to see that their monuments have actually lasted. I think they'd be astonished to travel forward 5,000 years in time and to enter the chamber of Newgrange on winter solstice and to still see the light coming in, you know. Really extraordinary stuff. Fourknocks tells us so much. It tells us about the importance of hilltop locations, of that full horizon view. And in the introduction, I talk about all of the other important, not just monuments and prehistoric structures, but of course the landscape features, the mountains, the distant hills, the Irish Sea, the Hill of Tara, Rath Essa, the Wicklow cairns, the cairns, or at least the distant mountaintops of the Mourne Mountains, the Loch Crew cairns. It tells us something, it fills in a significant part of the picture about Neolithic, megalithic art. It's got fabulously preserved examples of both picked and incised art. And the bones, I think, are going to tell us a story. I think Hartnett would be just overjoyed if he was able to, you know, look down on us, as it were, or look at us from wherever he is now, and to see all of the information that's coming forward as well. So this is the last chapter. It's a short chapter, so I'll read it for you, just to give you my thoughts on why Fourknocks is such an important and significant monument. To my knowledge, if you discount the excavation report, actually, before I do that, I see Sally Siggins there, so I just want to make sure that I have said hello to all of the people who've joined us. For family size, says Helen, you might reach out to Graham Warren at University College Dublin. His specialty is Mesolithic Ireland, and his book Hunter-Gatherer Ireland is actually, I saw that on sale at Brunabonia yesterday, and I just said to myself, I have to get that because I don't have it in my library. So thank you for that, Helen. I will do that. Who else? Some nice welcomes for Joan and the newcomers. Photos later, please. We want photos. You mean of Fourknocks? Yeah, well, you've bought the book. It's on its way to you. I remember signing about the fact that it's always a pleasure to see another Murphy. Is there a digital reversed map of the waterways surrounding? This is Gordon Farrell. Hello, Gordon. Surrounding the Fourknocks region, lakes or rivers that may have played an important part in its function. Yeah, well, of course, the Delvin River, which leads down to the coast, where there are the Braemore and Delvin passage tombs, at least 6 or 7, I think, passage tombs there. So, yeah, it's very important. That's the route way. What is the website that shows you the map of all the waterways in Ireland? It's not tributaries.ie. There's a website showing you all. It's a digital map of all the known water courses, the rivers, the streams, tributaries, lakes, etc. All of the major waterways of Ireland. Catchments, I think it is. Is it catchment or catchments? Catchment. Let me just check this. No, it's not catchment singular. It might be catchments plural. Yeah, that's the one. That's the one to check out, Gordon. That's the quickest answer, I think, to your question. Ali says, this is my favorite episode of Mythflix. Your passion is infectious. Well, look, I've been visiting Fourknocks for about 20 years. And since the very first time I visited, I always thought it's a very, very special monument. And it struck me in recent time. It struck others too. I mean, Paul Goran, who's a regular viewer of the live streams, since we got to know each other since the pandemic. And once the pandemic eased off and the restrictions eased, he made lots of visits to the Fourknocks landscape, and he's quite familiar with it. He and others would have said, you know, Anthony, there's a book here, you know, and it's something I've sort of been thinking about on and off over the years, but the time was right for it now. You know, I had collected enough photography of it, and I'd been there and seen all of its megalithic art, and I had read Hartnett's paper inside out, and I just felt, yeah, you know what, it needs its own book, because as much as this is very valuable, the original publication report from 1957 is, I understand, out of print, and it's expensive to find a copy of it. Yeah, I just felt an illustrated and a guide containing lots of color photography would be the best way to go. Anyway, I'll read this Silent Pilgrim. Wish somebody would create jewelry for this with this specific art. You mean like this? Tom King's your man. Let's just say it's not Fourknocks, says Lady Cara. I say that sometimes to my tour guests. I say, we're about to enter this amazing monument, not to be confused with Fourknocks, but there is a different kind of treasure in Fourknocks, archaeological and mythological treasure. Sally Siggins is here saying, good evening, over at your side of the country for once. Oh, really? Whereabouts? And yeah, great. Welcome to the Boyne Valley, you know. I was in your part of the country, as you know, last week. So yeah, looking forward to November, to that event. Heather Marie says, controversial idea, lol. Faroe Isles were also known as the fairies. Do you think it's possible people left there for Ireland, maybe with sidereal knowledge? Absolutely. In Laura Gowalla, we're told that the Tuatha Danann had been in the northern isles of the world studying druidism and magic and all of the sciences and the mystic arts. And Simon Chute put the idea into my head a while back that he thinks that they're referring to the Outer Hebrides and the Orkney Isles. We know that there was trade. We know that they were in contact with each other. Absolutely makes sense. I'm not sure about the Faroe Isles, but certainly Orkney. No idea what the landmass was like back then, but would be interesting to find out if it is possible. Maybe they left due to a cataclysm of some kind. I tried to find out, and hard to find out a thing earlier than 6th century-ish. Yeah, and that's the same here because nothing is written down in Ireland until the monks arrive. I agree with Gordon Farrell's contention that the importance of monuments in Ireland should be impressed at a young age in schools. Absolutely. When I was in school, the history, the section of the history book dealing with prehistory, until the Celts, of course, the section dealing with the Stone Age was a couple of pages. Not much better, because I remember my eldest daughter in secondary school brought home her history book, and it boldly pronounced that Newgrange was 4,500 years old. And I said, well, you got that wrong by 7 centuries. What does that tell us about the state of education around the importance of these monuments if they can't get the date right? You know, a simple thing. I mean, a quick Google search will reveal that. You don't even need to be an academic scholar. There's lots of websites will tell you that. But yeah. Joseph is in the house. Bonsoir. Trononoa Makara. What a pleasure. Are you doing anything for Heritage Week? Yes, 3 events. So, Joseph, when the episode ends, it'll be immediately available to replay. And in the early part of the episode, I spoke about those 3 events. You can see details of those on the Mythical Ireland Facebook and Instagram. So I've shared information about 3 different events. Next Saturday, next Sunday, and the following Wednesday. And one of those next Sunday afternoon is at Clonalvey National School, close to Fourknocks, and that the theme of that talk is entirely about Fourknocks, if you're interested in coming along. Barbara is saying, can you type it out so I can get a screenshot? I missed writing it down. Type what out? Is that for me? Is that for someone else, Barbara? I'm not sure what you're talking about. So if you just reiterate what you're looking for, we'll try and help you. Wendy Connolly says the ceremonial chamber and references to the Red Deer artifacts are very intriguing. It's easy to let our imaginations get away from us. Looking forward to more. Yeah, but I think the Carrow Keel revelations were extraordinary in that regard. 3 distinct phases. Antler objects only, then human bones, and towards the latter stages of the use of the cairns at Carrow Keel, a tendency towards complete skulls, or almost complete human skulls. Amazing stuff. So when those monuments were built, before they buried humans in there, they buried red deer antler objects. Clearly an animal that was very sacred, because unlike the cow, they don't seem to have eaten the meat of the deer, but the antlers were very, very important, you know. John tells us swans are sacred birds in India and the lands around it. To harm them enrages. Yeah, but the swans, it is clear, I think, from the proliferation of swan mythology, the children of Lear, Ashlinga, Engiso, Tuchmark, Etain, in which, you know, Midger and Etain take the form of swans when they fly out of Tara, and others, and of course some of those associated with very significant monuments. You know. Anyway, let me read this final chapter to give you a flavour. Some of you have the book already. Some of you have ordered it, and if you haven't done so, hopefully this will give you a flavour of what you can expect. But this is a summary, as it were. One last thought. To my knowledge, if you discount the Excavation report authored by PJ Hartnett in 1957, this is the first book about Fourknocks ever published. One of the archaeologists who contributed to this work commented that it was, quote unquote, long overdue. Fourknocks holds a special place in my heart, and indeed in the hearts of many of those who have visited it over the decades since the excavation. The monument boasts the largest chamber floor space of any excavated Irish passage tomb. Clearly, this makes it unique, but it is evident that the large chamber presented significant design and engineering challenges for its builders. Sometime after it was built, the roof collapsed. The archaeological evidence would appear to show that no effort was made to rebuild it. It may well be that the human burials found in the passage of the monument relate to a post-collapse phase when the tomb was still being used for burials, but during which time the chamber was inaccessible, being full of stone from the collapsed roof. It is possible, I think likely, but I wanted to sort of be careful about not getting too excited. You can't anticipate the results of scientific analysis too much because we can't foretell what the study by Smith and Geber, Dr. Smith and Dr. Geber will reveal. So I say it is possible, but I think it's probable that the study currently being undertaken by Dr. Smith and Dr. Geber will reveal a chronological sequence for the burials. We look forward with much anticipation to the publication of the results of their project. And of course, as soon as that happens, I'll be all over it. I'll be doing live streams. I'll do detailed analysis for my website, and hopefully incorporate it into a revised, expanded version of this book at some point over the next few years. If nothing else, the collapse of the roof of Fourknocks proves that its builders were human and therefore fallible. Lest it be forgotten, Newgrange endured a similar fate during the slippage of its cairn, Sheedin Broga, to give it its old name, when loose stones from the top of the monument tumbled out over the side, burying the curbstones and the chamber entrance. Archaeologists believe that the interior of Newgrange was sealed off for about 4,000 years. It was first entered by modern humans in the year 1699 CE, or AD if you prefer. Fourknocks faced a similar fate. Its ceiling probably collapsed in the Neolithic, while the monument was still being used for human burials. In a way, that collapse helped to, quote-unquote, seal in the cremations and inhumations in the chamber recesses. And those human remains were to lie there undisturbed for around 5,000 years, until Paddy Hartnett and his team excavated the monument in September of 1950. Fourknocks is a story of human endeavour, dedication, and ingenuity. It belongs to a distant era of the past when the first communities began to settle down and mark out territory for farming and for monumental construction and religious expression. It is a remarkable monument, unparalleled in its design, and that's no exaggeration. It also has some of the best preserved megalithic art to be seen in any European Neolithic structure. Its story deserves to be told. Fourknocks may be small in comparison to the great mega mounds of Brunabonia, but its diminutive size should not detract from the fact that it is one of the most important prehistoric monuments in the Western Hemisphere, and that's no exaggeration. What an honour and a pleasure it has been to attempt to tell its story. Anthony Murphy, Drogheda, July 2024. Concluding words of the Fourknocks monograph. Fourknocks, archaeology, astronomy, and mythology. And the reason I say what a pleasure it has been to attempt to tell its story is that I understand at all times that I'm not an archaeologist. Something I highlighted or accentuated at the launch of the book in Drogheda a week and a half ago. I've had Mythical Ireland followers who have told me, don't apologize, Anthony, you are actually an archaeologist because you've made a lot of discoveries. But you know what I mean? I don't have the formal training. But the skill, I think, here is the skill of a journalist, which is my career history, of bringing together all the facts and presenting them in a way that's understandable by the lay person, the ordinary person who doesn't have specialized knowledge of archaeology and the chronological development of human presence in Ireland, and Neolithic tools, and decorated items, and Neolithic astronomy, and mythology, and place names, and all of that. So yeah, it's an attempt to tell the story. I really delighted with what has emerged. The original plan was that the book would run to about 100 to maybe 112 pages, which would have been that much, and as I wrote it, I just realized, no, I need to have a section about the archaeologist. I'd love to include a section about the finds. I need to go and get photographs of those from the museum. It needs to have a comprehensive section on the megalithic art, the astronomy, the alignments, the other monuments, and then the likes of the photographs of the roof installation. When they arrived, I was like, have to include those. And Dr. Steve Davis gave me kind permission to use the LiDAR, and so it grew and grew and grew. And just when I thought it was finished, as I said, I made that discovery in July. So just over a month ago, I discovered that those crop marks, which look like they're maybe a very significant, unknown, previously unrecorded monument on the top of Heathtown, or close to the top of Heathtown Hill. And what has emerged is what I believe will be a beautiful guidebook for anybody who wants to go to Fourknocks. Currently, if you go there, if you haven't read Mythical Ireland and other websites, and you haven't read some of the archaeological books, you won't know much about it. And while you're there, you won't be able to interpret what you're seeing. You'll just be able to look at some of the megalithic art and see that it's a tomb or a chamber. And, now, without having to hire a guide, you can bring your own guidebook, Yeah, what a real pleasure. It really has been. As I say, book number 10, nowhere close to being my largest book, but would be in the middle somewhere. I think the total word count, for those who are interested in that kind of information, I think the total word count is about 40,000 words. And just to give you an indication, the largest books are Island of the Setting Sun and Mythical Ireland. They're about 100,000. So about 2.5 times the word count. But the fact that it's so heavily illustrated with photographs, diagrams, illustrations, etc., and all in full color, I think really makes it a very attractive book too. And I hope that it introduces that wonderful and remarkable monument to a wider audience, because there is definitely a rise, and there has been throughout the past couple of decades, especially the last 10 years. There's been a huge rise of interest in Irish pre-Christian sites and sacred sites, monuments, mythology, Irish language and culture. All this stuff seems to be re-emerging. It feels like the time is right for a book about Fourknocks, to be honest with you. Let me have a look back at some of the comments that have come in the last while that I didn't answer. Oh, Barbara, yeah. So Barbara was looking for the site for the waterways, and Gordon has typed it out, which is catchments.org, is it? I had catchments.ie. It's probably pointing to the same website. Yeah, sometimes the scientific facts provide information beyond our imagination, says Helen. And the fascinating thing about that is, in relation to Newgrange, the science over recent decades has been proving the mythology and the folklore about Newgrange to be true. So yes, so the foundation of all of this work is the wonderful, the detailed, the skilled, the professional, the forensic effort and skill and dedication of a generation of archaeologists, or several generations of archaeologists. Like I said, I stand on the shoulders of giants, and PJ Hartnett was one of those. So there's no mythical Ireland without archaeologists, and many of them are friends of mine. And I'm delighted to say that regularly, in relation to lots of aspects of the past, I'm in touch with archaeologists who are friends or acquaintances, and they're all very generous with their time and opinion. I don't think I've ever been told by an archaeologist to feck off, you're only a journalist or you're only an amateur, you know. Whenever I've approached archaeologists, whether in person, on the phone, by email, they've always come back and said, yeah, here's some answers to some of your questions. And for instance, in 2012, when I was writing my Newgrange book, which, watch this space, I'm strongly thinking about bringing that back into print, but it needs to be updated. When I approached Dr. Conor Brady of DKIT, Dundalk Institute of Technology, I said to him, I'm writing as a journalist, but I'm writing a lot about archaeology, and I basically want to make sure I'm not making a fool of myself. Would you read a draft of the book and make sure I'm not making a fool? And he said, absolutely, it would be my pleasure. This is the kind of people I'm dealing with. Geraldine and Matthew Stout, Dr. Steve Davis. Myself and Richard met Professor Gabriel Cooney at the National Museum during one of our visits. And when we told him what we were doing, he was excited and delighted for us, what a pleasure it has been to include Richard in the acknowledgments, because he really started everything for me in this whole sphere of Mythical Ireland over 25 years ago. And we're still good friends, and he's still helping out, and he's still encouraging. So yeah, absolutely. All of those people, and the late Professor Michael O'Kelly, the late Professor George Ogan, the late PJ Hartnett, the late Sean O'Riordan, the late Frank Mitchell, and all of those, the people whose work was the foundation of, and a lot of it was like brilliant scholarship, brilliant forensic archaeology. And then the new generation, the likes of Dr. Smith and Dr. Gebber and others. Yeah, I'm privileged, honored, delighted to count them as friends. And even like Sally Siggins, who's commenting tonight, is the chief guide at Carrow Moor in Sligo. And Sally has been very encouraging, very generous with her opinions and her information. When I went to Carrow Moor and I took detailed notes of the tour she gave there, I later said, would you mind if I reproduce this as a sort of a blog post? And would you read over it to make sure it's accurate? And of course she did. They're all brilliant people, and none of this work would be possible without them. They're the foundation, really, Gordon says, Richard is such a gentleman. You are completely 100% right, Gordon. What a lovely man he is. Karen Smith says, what a wonderful thing to discover. Kia ora from Aotearoa, New Zealand. Good morning to you, Karen. Happy Wednesday. From all of us who are still, there's another viewer in Auckland. Happy Tuesday from most of us who are in the Western and Northern Hemisphere. The Lady Cara, they've got to be grateful for someone to explain it plainly to folks with the sources to back up the conversation. And yeah, the other thing about the monographs and all of the Mythical Ireland books, really most of them, is the comprehensive footnotes and the bibliography. So in other words, if you're reading and you're going, I'm really interested in this thing about the antlers, or I'm interested in the stone pendants, or I'm interested in, the chronology of the development of the tombs in Ireland. Yeah, there's lots of sources that you can then follow if you want to expand on that, I think you fall into the category, says Barbara, of a vocational archaeologist compared to professional. Yeah, I've been called citizen archaeologist. Look, I don't go for titles. That for me is not important. What's important is imparting the information and getting people to appreciate and love Irish heritage, Irish monumental heritage, Irish mythological heritage, and to appreciate it in a way that wants to make them know more about it and know it and appreciate its importance, but also to want to protect it so that future generations can enjoy it as we have done, you know. Mariana is very much looking forward to the book. Yeah, I'm glad you enjoyed the episode, Mariana, and I'm sure you will enjoy the book. And I say, I hope that doesn't sound like boasting. Audiobook, Anthony. Yeah, a few people have asked that about all of my books. I'd love to do audiobooks. I don't have the time to record them, to be honest. Don't know if Fourknocks would work as an audiobook because it really needs those visuals, you know. I really feel that. It's a very visual book. I mean, as much as the text tells the story, it would. I'm not sure if it would work without the images. Not sure. Something to explore, certainly. And thank you for that comment. Apparently, I have the voice of the Late Late Show. Yeah, a bit croaky tonight because I've been doing a lot of talking over the last week and a half to groups of visitors. And critical thinking, says Heather Marie, it's important. But I also like the fact that as an independent scholar who doesn't have to worry about peer review, that doesn't mean I'm reckless or irresponsible. But I like exploring possibilities, as you know, and you know, speculating. And if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. Fine, let me be wrong. But speculating about possibilities, I believe, is a good thing because it leads to discussion of those possibilities and whether we can rule them in or out, without talking about aliens or, you know, without going down, without having the need to engage in conspiracy theory stuff, you know. Sometimes the scientific yes, I read that already. The Lady Cara says the legends surrounding white stags are quite interesting, and that's an area that I actually need. It's a deficiency in terms of my knowledge. I need to go back and reread some of those stories because it's clear from archaeology that deer antler are important. It's clear from archaeology that hazelnuts were an important part of the Mesolithic diet. They're very important in the lore of wisdom and the salmon of knowledge. The salmon itself is important in Irish mythology. The swans are important in Irish mythology. And swan bones are found at Neolithic sites, although curiously not Newgrange, but that's probably because enough of the site hasn't been excavated. I believe they probably will be found at some point in the future. Maybe they won't. I know. Again, speculating, you know. Annette Kelly says, received. Thanks, Anthony. Can't wait to delve deeper once working week over. Brilliant stuff, Annette. Dive deeply into it. I hope you thoroughly enjoy it, you know. And Heather Marie says, well, what about an audiobook alongside the physical? Yeah, you know, I think it would work. It's time consuming though. I need to record and I need to do so. I haven't got the finance to rent a studio. So I would have to record it here. And that means recording late at night when there's no noise in the house or in the neighborhood. And hopefully the dogs keeping quiet during the recording. Now, they were very quiet tonight, in fairness to them. That's something I would love to do. And actually, the best book of all for audio would be Return to Segish, because it doesn't have any footnotes. It's a free-flowing, mythological, spiritual, psychological, mystical, artistic, poetic book, you know. Most professional archaeologists, says Barbara Murphy, fully understand that without public interest, there would not be anything for us to see and for others to appreciate. Typing this and then you use the same words. There you go. Yeah, great minds think alike. Murphys always think the same. Ruth Graham says, you are keeping the memory of so many eminent professors, authors alive. Keep up the good work. Well, I'm a regrettable aspect of some modern social media behavior is the denigration of deceased archaeologists and criticism of them when they're not able to defend themselves. You know, most of them were, all of them, in fact, in Irish terms, were great We're great scientists. We're great excavators. We're very dutiful. We're very skilled. We're very learned. And I think it's poor form for people to use modern social media to criticize people who are dead and not here to defend themselves. That doesn't mean we can't criticize, of course, but criticize constructively and fairly. Hartnett, I felt I paid a special tribute to. And one thing I haven't mentioned tonight that's very important to me is the dedication of the book. And the book is, I'll read the dedication. Dedicated to the fond memory of the late Fenton White, former custodian of the key to Fourknocks for many years, and to his wife Margaret, who continues to carry out that very important duty. And there's photographs of the late Fenton in his house. And Margaret, I took that picture months ago. I was collecting the key, and as she handed it to me, I took her photograph. Of course, I later asked her, and I showed her a draft, and I said, look, if it's okay, this is what I want to do. I was delighted that Margaret and her daughter turned up to the launch, and it was great to be able to pay tribute not just to PJ Hartnett and his surviving descendants, but also to Fenton and Margaret, who are a hugely important part of the modern visitor experience. Because without them, the OPW would keep the key at the Trim depot, which would require an hour-long drive over to collect the key, to come back to Fourknocks, to visit Fourknocks, and then an hour long. So an hour, and then another hour to drop the key back to Trim. The fact that it is held locally is hugely important. Helen agrees. Return to Segish would be perfect as an audiobook. Yes, indeed. And remember, folks, all of my books, apart from the two that are out of print, Newgrange Monument to Immortality and Land of the Ever-Living Ones, are available as signed copies on the Mythical Ireland website. Good news, my intention is to republish Land of the Ever-Living Ones in the coming month or so in a revised, smaller format. It was a thin, sort of flimsy book when it was. It's a novella. It's a short novel. I think it's 20,000 words, something like that. But printed in a pocket-sized book, and I believe that you will love it. Those of you who haven't got it, you can get a digital version from the website, but I'm planning to reprint it so that you'll be able to buy a physical copy. So there you are. Yeah, reflection rather than criticism, says Gordon. Yeah. I mean, when I'm dead, I'm absolutely sure of it. There'll be people who look back and say, don't like what Murphy said about that. To be honest, I think he was, wide of the mark. Or I think that was just utter speculation. Or what's that stuff about the high man? That was a bit far out, Yeah, I'll be dead, so I won't care. But while I'm alive, it's nice to be able to discuss this in a mature and professional way. For people to say, well, for instance, one of the people who attended the book launch was an Irish scholar. And he felt that I was wrong to lean towards the name of Fourknocks being the Fourknocks, because the four part is an English word. And he might be right, of course, but we would be well able to, I know the man very well, we'd be well able to debate that respectfully and in an educated fashion without being reduced to insults and, denigration. So yeah, brilliant. Folks, thank you for your company. We didn't do an episode on Lunasa, which I had planned to do last week, coinciding with Astronomical Lunasa. I apologize for that. The good news is that we have previously done episodes about Lunasa. There's a special video on my YouTube channel called Brone Trogan, which is the other name for Lunasa. So there's plenty of stuff there if you wanted to follow that one up. A belated happy birthday to Ken Williams, who, for some reason, I didn't know his birthday coincided with Astronomical Lunasa. And what a harvest of archaeology his work has produced. Fabulous. Fellow Drogheda man. Delighted to know him. Was in my company on the evening of the great discoveries at Brunabonia, Dronehenge, etc., and has made so many significant contributions himself. And I think we can rightly call him an archaeologist. And wasn't it Tom King? Wasn't it you? Am I right? Was your birthday was the day after? And one thing that we overlooked, actually, Tom, You had a significant birthday this year, did you not? On the 8th of August. So astronomical lunar was on the 7th. Now, if you are interested in astrology, I don't subscribe to it, but I don't run it down either. You know, I'm a reasonably open-minded. But there's a lot of talk about the Lion's Gate, the 8th of the 8th. So if that's your birthday, Tom, it's very significant. And it's really no wonder that you have this enormous reach in terms of, you know, your personality and your skill, that it's being seen by the whole world and they're coming to you now because your birthday being closely associated with Lunasa and the time of harvest. Well, your harvest of skill and artistry has been enjoyed by the Tua all around the world. So Tom celebrated 50. He and I are the same age. We were born in the same year. So Tom celebrated the big half century 5 days ago. So a very special happy birthday to Tom. And thank you for being a significant part of the live streams, because I didn't know you before the pandemic and got to know you during the pandemic. And we've had a great friendship and a professional relationship as well. And delighted that you've seen so much success in terms of winning awards and your stuff, your wonderful creations being shipped around the world, and the fact that people are coming to take part in your tours of the forge and your hands-on stuff. Yeah, so I couldn't say enough about you. But a big happy 50th birthday to Tom King. On Gowa, the smith of the Boyne Valley, the smith of the forge of the smooth road, Shlí Ashel, the one leading from Tara to Rathcrohan, passing through Bohermeen, which literally means the smooth road, and passing close by the hill of Fahan, the reputed burial place of Niall of the Nine Hostages. Such, and don't forget the location of the finds of several Bronze Age items that were made by smiths working in that same area over 4,000 years ago. Amazing stuff. Yeah, so happy birthday to Tom, and many more of them, my good friend, many more of them. I'm hoping you and I reach the double half century, or the century. I doubt very much that I'll make it, but you never know. I always say that being engaged in this wonderful work of exploring Ireland's ancient monuments and landscape, and its myths and legends and stories, and its language and culture and music and poetry, and writing about that and sharing it, keeps you young, and yeah, that wonderful youthful exuberance that you have, that my guests at the book launch got to savor on Sunday last week, when you walked in bedecked in your smith's gear and your sheepskin, and it was like somebody had stepped out of a time machine outside the door and stepped forward 4,000 years in time from those early Bronze Age smiths who worked metal in Bohermeen. Amazing stuff. Anyway, very good night to you all. Thank you so much. Don't forget just to share the link one last time in terms of where you can pre-order. Sorry, not pre-order. I'm so used to saying pre-order. It's not pre-order. If you order the book, we usually dispatch them, myself and Dan, and my other half, my partner, my life partner, my wife, of 26 years this coming Thursday, by the way, is a hugely important cog in the Mythical Ireland engine. If you've received a book, almost certainly it is Anne who has done the enveloping and the packaging and the labeling and all that stuff. And she does a wonderful job, and I'd be lost without her. So she's so important. But anyway, if you order the book, we will endeavor to get it dispatched within 24 hours. I hadn't realized there was a Mythflix this evening, says Alan. Yeah, apologies. I only announced it an hour beforehand. And yeah, you can catch up on the catch up. But, while we're still live, we can say hello to you. It's a quick hello, because it's kind of a hello and a slán at the same time. But look, delighted that you were able to get the chance to even say hello. Yeah, so I hope you've enjoyed it. A special episode for me, because it gives you a tiny insight into, I hope, at least a tiny insight into the labor of love that has been putting this book together. People have been asking me over the last week and a half, how long did it take you to write? And I said, well, to write, just over 12 months. But the book has been in the making for 20 years, and really for 25 years since I met Richard Moore. Yeah, a really, really, really special monument. Beautiful place to visit. So if you're going there, say hello to Margaret. Oh, yeah, that was the other thing. The thing I was writing when I started the live stream. So if you're in the area and you want to pick up a copy, you can call to me. You can arrange to call to me. I'll sign one. If you want to save on postage. The book is available right now from Margaret White, where you collect the key. She has copies, signed copies. You can buy them directly off her. They're available from Boyne Valley Wools, Alison's place, close to the Brunabonia Visitor Centre. As of tomorrow or the next day, they'll be available at Maguire's on the Hill of Tara and the Brunabonia Visitor Centre. And where else? That was what I was trying to think. There was one other place. Sooner rather than later, they'll also be available in Shine in Slane, who have copies of my other books. And where else? I'm trying to think. There's definitely somewhere else. I'll basically try to get it into as many of the bookshops as possible. Oh, yeah, it will be available soon in the Solstice Arts Centre in Navan in County Meath. I'm probably forgetting somewhere. But anyway, yeah. Yes, indeed, Alan, I saw that and hope if that was ordered today, it should be out in tomorrow's post. And if you're in Ireland, a lot of the Irish books arrived the day after they were posted. Anna L., who's not watching this evening in Balbriggan, got hers the day after. She was one of the first to receive her copy. So if you receive it, please do feel free to let us know and share your thoughts on it, of course. You know, that's how authors, it's difficult for an author to make a living. It really is. So one of the ways that really helps is to review the book and is to talk about it and share the link with others. You know, yes, the red sky is completely gone, but look, it was absolutely worthwhile. It's been an enjoyable evening for me, and it's been wonderful to have your company, as it always is. Right. I hope, let me just quickly, before I completely just disconnect from the camera, let me just check the calendar to make sure. Yeah, the next episode will be next Monday. The regular live streams. So we will return to the Monday slot next week. That's the intention anyway. If that's not possible for reason of tours or other things, I'll try to give you plenty of notice. But thanks for showing up. Thank you very much to all of you for supporting the publication of the book by buying it or by contributing to the cost or by being a patron. It is very, very gratefully appreciated on my part. Ikawa, Slán go fóil, Tóg go bugé, Colasov. No, the last one is supposed to be Tóg go bugé, which means take it easy. See you all next week. And in the meantime, of course, keep an eye on the social media. Like last night, the surprise appearance of the, thank you, Mickey, the surprise appearance of the Aurora Borealis and the resulting pictures. I should mention that you can get limited edition print of last night's Aurora picture over Douth. I shared that earlier on, so you can find that on the website. Yeah, Toga Buggy. Until next week, we'll see you all. And be safe, be sound, be happy. Hopefully the sun shines on you. And whatever it is you're doing, hopefully you will be successful.